Hi everyone, here's Juliana, and in this video I will give you an overview of the research behind the development of the SpinyLeaf app. Now, the SpinyLeaf app is the tool I created as part of my PhD, which is part of a broader project funded by the ARC Linkage Project in partnership with Uniting Communities and the Australian Institute of Architects. And the aim of this project is to investigate how high-rise mixed-use buildings can foster occupant well-being through design. So for that, we use the framework developed by Professor Flora Samuel. The name is Social Value Framework. And according to this proposed framework, the social value of the built environment can be evaluated through these 5 different dimensions. And my PhD focuses specifically on the well-being generated by design. So we aim to understand how the design of high-rise buildings can impact or affect the well-being of its occupants. So for that we have the case study, which is U City Development in Adelaide. So that's the building. U City is a vertical mixed-use community composed. It's a retirement living community. So we have at the top the retirement apartments, and we also have the accessible long-term stay and also short-term stay for disability. Then we have the offices, community and public spaces, also community and medical services for vulnerable population. And on the ground floor we have cafes, community art studio, and the lobby. So my research questions are these. So first, how can the architectural design and performance of high-rise mixed-use developments affect and improve occupants' well-being? Then, what are the quantifiable building elements or design factors that impact well-being? How can factors influence occupant satisfaction and well-being be quantified and scored to support the development of predictive models and define thresholds for evaluating building design performance? And finally, how can post-occupancy evaluation data and identified spatial thresholds be translated into actionable design guidance to inform and improve future high-rise building design? And to start to answering these questions, I first proposed a framework which was published in Buildings and Cities Journal. So the name of the paper is Wellbeing Fostered by Design, a framework for evaluating indoor environment performance. You can find through this door, and also on the website we have a link to this paper. And it's important to say that the focus of my PhD is the early design stage. So these factors here that I identified are the ones that we can measure or quantify in early stage of design. Of course, there are others. These are not all the factors, but these are the factors for early stage. Some other factors, let's say material finish or aesthetics, this can be addressed later in a later stage. So it's not included here, just to clarify, okay? So I started by first identifying these factors, and here I divide them in 3 different dimensions. So the first one is comfort, or the absence of negative stimuli. We have thermal comfort, visual comfort, acoustic comfort, and air quality. Then I'm calling delight, or the presence of positive stimuli. So the provision of the views, daylight access to green, like personal access, or the apartment access to green areas, and the living space size. And finally, we have the social. So through the literature, and it's explained in this paper, so through the literature, I identified that for high-rise buildings or high-density buildings, it's very important the provision of space for social interaction. So that's the 3rd dimension, social. And the factors are the amount of social space, if they have enough in terms of quantity, area for social space, for social interaction. And then distribution of social space is not necessarily how distributed in the building, but also through There are 4 different levels, and I will explain later in this presentation, but the 4 different levels of space for social interaction, if there is a balanced distribution if across these 4 types of space that I will explain later. And finally, the building access to green area. So here I'm talking about personal access, so the apartment access to a green area, and that's through the provision of balconies. Here is if the building has access to a communal green area, such as a community garden, could be a rooftop, or any adjacent green area that people can, that's part of a social space for social interaction, but in a green area. So after identifying these factors, I'm proposing this framework for collecting data. So first, the comfort. We can use data loggers to collect temperature, luminance values, CO2, etc. And at the same time, we have the survey, the occupants answering the surveys in terms of thermal satisfaction, in terms of satisfaction with these factors. And then for the light dimension, we can collect the data through the building 3D model. So we can simulate views, and collecting this data will show you next. Access, quantify the amount of the area of balconies you have, the living space size, and again, the occupant giving feedback, so we can correlate these values with their answers to develop these predictive models. And the same for social. Through the building 3D model, we can extract these values and correlate with the occupants' feedbacks that I'm collecting with surveys. And then we put these 3 together to evaluate how well the building is performing in fostering well-being. So that's how I collected the comfort dimension. I have data loggers. So this is one of the data loggers used. This is collecting temperature, humidity. Some of the loggers could collect illuminance levels, but I also use simulation using the real data, like the actual environment data, to simulate and collect the data so I could correlate with the answers. So they answer the survey on their phone or tablet, and then I put these values together, the temperature, the data collected through the loggers, and their thermal satisfaction, their perception of air quality, daylight perception, and so on. And then in this survey, I'm also asking about their overall satisfaction with the indoor environment. The idea is to understand the combination of all these factors, how they affect their overall satisfaction. So first, I correlate their answers in terms of satisfaction with each individual factor here, thermal, sound, daylight, etc. And then I have a machine learning model, I train a machine learning model to predict how satisfied they will be overall in relation to the comfort dimension. And this was published in the Smart and Sustainable Built Environment. That's the link for this paper is also in the website, but it details how I use this data that I collected to train these models, and these models are integrated in the tool to predict in the comfort dimension the overall satisfaction. So in this diagram I'm explaining, so first we in the tool, right? We first simulate temperature, relative humidity, all these values can be simulated. And then I pass these values through the regression models that I developed with the data that I collected. And finally, I have the machine learning prediction and the final score for the comfort dimension. And then similarly, I would do similar with with the light. So we have first the views. I'm using Ladybug tools. So first I simulate the views in each apartment. So I have the simulation here, and then I have the average for each apartment. And we're collecting data through the survey, so I can find these thresholds for views, views of green, outdoor views, and also here the balconies and living space size. So here I'm not training any machine learning model because the difference in the comfort dimension, for example, I have 34, I believe, participants answering regularly the surveys. And so at the end, I had around 800 answers for the apartments and almost 600 answers for the offices. So that was enough to train the machine learning models. In this case here, because there's no variation, the occupants, the participants were answering only once. So in the end, I had like 34, 35 answers. And that was not enough to train machine learning models. So here what I'm doing, so the weight to calculate the final score, it can be given by the designer. And also because in the case of, you cannot have access to good views. For example, if you are in the city surrounded by tall buildings, there's no way you can have views. You can kind of mitigate, so you put the weight of views down, and these will automatically adjust the weights for access to green, and apartment size will adjust the weights up if you put this down. And then that means you should give more attention to these other two factors to somehow mitigate the factor that the fact that you don't have views. So there's no, the weights here is not given by machine learning, but it's given manually. Then finally, the social. Similarly, we're collecting data about the amount, distribution, and building access to green areas, and then they are answering the survey. And here, I mentioned in the beginning that I identified 4 different levels of social, and I'll explain. So social level 1 are the space with public access, usually on the ground floor, and with retail, cafes, shops, or any, let's say, any activity that will attract the public to use this space. It's not just a lobby. If it's just a lobby, then would be classified as social level 2. But if it has retail or cafe, that prompts the pedestrian here to go and use the space as well, not just the occupant, the building occupant, then is the social level 1. And then we have the social level 2, which is public access, but with no retail. In this case, we have social level 2 here on level 3, on the 3rd floor, which is a community kitchen. Anyone can go and use the kitchen, and there is a lounge area. People can just stay there and relax. Not many people knows about this space, so it's a space that is a bit less attractive for non-occupants of the building. It's public, but it's different in terms of access. It's public and accessible, but not as many people will use as the social level 1 because of the cafes and the other activities that can attract people. And then we have the social level 3, which we don't have in this building, but it would be a space that is accessible by all the occupants of the building. In this case, because it's a mixed use, we have office workers and residents. We don't have a space that only the end can use, but both groups can use. And then we have the social level 4, which is accessible by only one group of occupants. In this case, we have an outdoor area here, but the main space for the main social interaction space is the club lounge on level 13. and this space is accessible only by the residents. Office workers cannot access. So that's an example. So this classification is important to calculate the distribution of social space. And through the literature, through the research, and also focus group discussion in the building, we found that it's important not only to have lots of space for social interaction, but also the level of accessibility influence the satisfaction. So for example, if you have only one centralized space here that anyone can access, well, the occupants could sometimes tend to withdraw the use of the space because they feel like they don't have control over the social interactions they will have on the space. So many would prefer a more private space that they can go and meet, just few occupants there. Just in this case here, we have this club lounge that is accessible only by the residents. So in this case, the residents, they felt way more satisfied than the workers, because the workers, they didn't have any space that only them could access. So there was some issues of using this space here, not go into much detail, but basically because of this space could be accessed by anyone. Initially, they were using this kitchen as a space that they were having lunch there and interacting with others. So the United Communities workers were interacting with the law firm workers there. But after some time, there were some issues there in terms of use of the space, and they stopped using the space. They start complaining that they would like to have a space only for the workers, for all the workers, so they can actually interact, but more private and not public. So that's the big difference here. And again, this the focus group discussion and these issues that they rose during the discussion confirms what we found on the literature review. So that to have these, what it's called buffer zones between so we have a public space, which is also important because sometimes people want to go and interact with other people, with people from outside the building. But it's important to give the option to have this, what they call buffer zones, to be more protective, and the occupant, they feel they have more control over the social interaction they're gonna have. It's important to have this distribution, to have this balance, and that's the distribution of social space. And the access to green areas, we don't have much green areas here, but I'm considering everything that's outdoor. It can be balcony, so we have here on the level 13 a large balcony. We also have the barbecue here, and on level 3 we also have a balcony. They can have plants there. They can kind of create these gardens and maintain. That's what happened here. They were keeping a garden there, but of course they found that they felt that this was not enough. They would like to have a rooftop, for example, that they could have a community garden there. So it's in this case we didn't have much to include here. But then these levels of satisfaction with all these three factors here were calculated because we only have two groups, and so for one group, the group of residents, these values were the same, and the group of workers, the values also the same. So we have only two values to compare. I didn't build a regression model. I used decision trees to calculate the threshold, and these thresholds are included in this in the app. And here it's similar to the light dimension. We're not having the machine learning model to predict the overall score. These can be manually adjusted. So for example, let's say we don't have any opportunities to create to have outdoor or green areas. So you adjust this down and you give more importance to the other. It's just an example. You can adjust any of the three parameters here, and all the other weights will readjust to have 100%. and these will calculate the score. And then finally, with the 3 scores here, we calculate the well-being fostered by design, and they all have the same weight. So all the 3 are equally important in this case. And then it will give the final score of well-being fostered by design. So that's how this diagram explaining how the app works. So we have the rhinoceros environment, and we have the SpinyLeaf interface that communicates through the Rhino common. We'll communicate with Ladybug and Honeybee libraries to run the simulations that I need, and also from the 3D model I can estimate the sound levels, and these values will pass through the regression, and then will predict the comfort satisfaction. For the daylight dimension, I'm using Ladybug tools to simulate the views, and also through the 3D model we extract the areas for the balconies and apartment size. Again, with the regression models, we predict how satisfied, and also the weights that were manually adjust, calculate the final score for this dimension. And again, the social dimension, it's also done through area extraction. So we calculate the areas and to give the final score. And after all these 3 dimensions are complete, you can go to the well-being fostered by design dimension, calculate the final score, and also generating the report either by OpenAI or Llama models. So here just how so the simulations views, and how it looks like on your screen. After simulating, you're gonna see all these results on your screen. You can visualize, can rotate the model to visualize where you can be having an issue. And this is the final score. That's for the light dimension and the social. And finally, the well-being fostered by design, all the 3 dimensions put together. And finally, if you have an OpenAI key, you can use the key to generate the report. Otherwise, there is an option to use the Llama model. It's another installation because it's way larger. Includes the Llama model, which only the model is around 5 gigas, and it can take much longer to generate. Depends on your computer performance, but basically it can take. My computer took around 20 minutes. So but both has very similar results, and you will generate this kind of report explaining first an overall well-being, the well-being score, and then we'll break down in the different dimensions, like pointing the rooms that you can probably have an issue, and also how to improve. Okay, thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can contact me. And then I have another video, a tutorial explaining how to install and how to use the tool. Thank you.